He thought he had buried the past, until he heard that voice, that melody. He had only heard it once in his life, on the lips of his daughter who had disappeared over 20 years ago. But now, a young stranger was singing every word, and what she revealed next brought the man to his knees. The morning sun painted Clearwater with golden strokes, bathing the coastal town in warm light that sparkled off the Pacific. Hope Bennett stood at the edge of the boardwalk, her chestnut hair dancing in the gentle breeze as she gazed at the horizon. For as long as she could remember, the ocean had been her confidant. The place where she came to escape the strange emptiness that had followed her throughout her 23 years. "I knew I'd find you here," came a soft voice behind her. Hope turned to see Mrs. Nancy, her silver-streaked dark hair tied back in her usual practical bun, holding a basket of freshly cut flowers. The older woman's weathered hands betrayed decades of hard work, though her eyes remained kind and bright. "Just needed to clear my head before tonight," Hope replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mrs. Nancy placed a gentle hand on Hope's shoulder. "Your mother would be so proud. Sweetheart, your voice is a gift." Hope's smile faltered. These vague references to her mother were all she ever got. No photographs, no stories. Just Mrs. Nancy's gentle evasions and the haunting melody that visited her dreams. "I had the dream again last night," Hope said quietly, her fingers absently tracing the crescent-shaped birthmark on her right wrist. The woman with the long hair, singing that song while holding a baby. It felt so real this time. Mrs. Nancy's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Dreams are just dreams, honey. Come on now. I need to set up my stall before the festival crowd arrives." Hope followed her adoptive mother through Clearwater's cobblestone streets, the town buzzing with anticipation for the annual Harvest Festival. Colorful banners stretched between lampposts proclaimed 43rd Annual Clearwater Grape Harvest, while locals hung decorations and set up booths in the town square. As Mrs. Nancy arranged her flowers in the market, Hope spotted a convoy of black SUVs making their way up the winding road toward Whitman Estate, the sprawling vineyard property that overlooked the town like a watchful guardian. "Looks like the king has returned to his castle," remarked Tom, the baker whose stand neighbored Mrs. Nancy's. "Frank Whitman himself, coming to grace us common folk with his presence." Mrs. Nancy's hands froze momentarily over a bundle of lilies. "Is he staying long?" "Word is he's opening the new winery on the south property," Tom replied. "Big ceremony tonight after the festival. The whole town's invited. Part of his new community-friendly image, I guess." Hope had heard the stories about the Whitmans, how they'd built their wine empire from nothing, how tragedy had struck when Frank's daughter died young, how the family had become increasingly reclusive. The details were always murky, shared in hushed tones when people thought she couldn't hear. "Maybe I'll check it out after my performance," Hope mused. "No." Mrs. Nancy's response came too quickly. It came too sharply. Noticing Hope's startled expression, she softened her tone. "I mean, you'll be tired after singing. Besides, those affairs are just for show, not worth your time." Throughout the day, the festival came alive with music, laughter, and the rich aroma of food. Hope helped at the flower stand, but her mind kept wandering to the melody that haunted her sleep, the one she'd practiced for tonight's performance. As dusk settled over Clearwater, Hope stood behind the small stage set up in the town square, her heart racing. Through a gap in the curtain, she could see the crowd had swelled beyond the usual festival attendance. Her gaze drifted to a cluster of people near the back, elegantly dressed visitors who stood out among the locals. Among them was a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and an air of authority that seemed to command respect even from a distance. "That's him," whispered Lisa, a fellow performer. "Frank Whitman, they say he hasn't attended a town festival in 15 years. Before Hope could respond, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers, announcing her name. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the stage, the familiar calm washing over her as it always did before she sang. Her first two songs, local favorites, were met with enthusiastic applause. For her final piece, Hope closed her eyes and let the haunting melody from her dreams flow through her. The notes seemed to rise from some place deep within her, a place beyond memory, beyond learning. The lullaby filled the night air, hauntingly beautiful and strangely ancient. The crowd fell silent. Captivated, Hope opened her eyes, her gaze inexplicably drawn to Frank Whitman. The man stood frozen, his face drained of color, staring at her as though seeing a ghost. As the final notes faded into the night, silence hung over the square for one breathless moment before erupting into thunderous applause. Hope bowed, but couldn't tear her eyes from the elderly man who now pushed his way urgently through the crowd, toward the stage. Backstage, she had barely placed her guitar in its case when a voice startled her. That song. The words came out ragged, almost desperate. "Where did you learn it?" Hope turned to face Frank Whitman, whose imposing presence seemed diminished by some powerful emotion she couldn't name. I didn't learn it anywhere," she stammered, unnerved by the intensity of his gaze. "It's just something I've always known, from my dreams." His eyes, a piercing blue that contrasted with his silver hair, scanned her face with desperate hunger before settling on her right wrist. His breath caught visibly. "That birthmark," he whispered, reaching forward before catching himself. Like a crescent moon, Hope instinctively covered it with her other hand, suddenly feeling exposed. "How do you know about my birthmark?" Before he could answer, Mrs. Nancy appeared, positioning herself between Hope and the older man. "Mr. Whitman, what a surprise to see you at our humble festival," she said, her typically warm voice edged with steel. Recognition flickered across his face. "You," he said quietly. "I know you." Mrs. Nancy's spine straightened. "I sell flowers in the market, sir. You may have seen me there." Frank's attention returned to Hope. "That song was written for my daughter Julia," he said, his voice catching. "I composed it myself. No one else could possibly know it unless—" Hope felt the world tilt slightly beneath her feet. "Unless what?" "Unless you're her daughter," he finished, his voice barely audible in the shocked silence that followed. Hope's gaze darted between Frank's haunted eyes and Mrs. Nancy's rigid expression, feeling the foundations of her life beginning to crumble beneath the weight of 3 simple words. "That's not possible," Mrs. Nancy said firmly, taking Hope's arm. "Come, Hope. It's been a long day." As Mrs. Nancy led her away, Hope glanced back at Frank Whitman, who stood motionless, watching them go with tears streaming down his weathered face. And for the first time in her life, Hope wondered if the emptiness she'd always felt might have a name, and if the melody that haunted her dreams might be the key to finding it. Sleep eluded Hope that night. She lay in her small bedroom above Mrs. Nancy's flower shop, staring at the ceiling as Frank Whitman's words echoed in her mind. Outside, the faint sounds of the festival's final revelries drifted through her open window, but Hope barely registered them. "Unless you're her daughter." She rose quietly and moved to the antique vanity mirror. Studying her reflection in the dim moonlight, Hope had always known she didn't resemble Mrs. Nancy, but she'd never questioned it. Plenty of adopted children didn't look like their parents. But now, examining her features with new scrutiny, she wondered whose eyes looked back at her. The bright emerald green had always stood out in Clearwater, where most residents, including Mrs. Nancy, had brown or blue eyes. The crescent birthmark on her wrist seemed to mock her with its secrets. Dawn was breaking when Hope finally drifted into restless sleep, only to be startled awake by an insistent knocking at the shop's front door. She stumbled downstairs to find Mrs. Nancy already there, her face tight with concern as she peered through the window. "It's him," Mrs. Nancy whispered, stepping back. "Frank Whitman." Hope moved forward, catching sight of the distinguished figure standing outside. Their eyes met through the glass, and something intangible passed between them. Without asking permission, she unlocked the door. "Mr. Whitman," Hope said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I apologize for coming so early," he said, his deep voice carrying the weight of sleepless hours. "But after last night, I couldn't wait." Mrs. Nancy stepped forward. "This isn't appropriate." Showing up at our home uninvited, Frank's gaze never left Hope. "I need to know. That melody. It was a lullaby I composed for my daughter Julia when she was expecting. No one else has ever heard it. It was never recorded, never shared, and yet I've been hearing it in my dreams since childhood," Hope replied quietly. Frank reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, weathered photograph. "This was my daughter," he said, extending it toward Hope with trembling fingers. Hope's breath caught in her throat. The young woman in the photograph had the same eyes as she did, unmistakably vibrant, even in the faded picture, and the same high cheekbones, the same gentle curve of the jawline, but it was the birthmark visible on Julia's exposed wrist that made Hope's heart stutter, identical to her own. "It's not possible," Mrs. Nancy insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "Nancy," Frank said, turning to the older woman with sudden recognition. "Or should I say, Gloria Mitchell?" Mrs. Nancy paled visibly. Hope looked between them in confusion. "You were our housekeeper," Frank continued. "You disappeared the night Julia died, the night we were told her baby died as well." Hope's world tilted. "Baby, what baby?" The bell above the shop door jingled, breaking the tense silence. A young man with earnest eyes and sandy hair stepped inside, then froze at the tableau before him. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, clearly sensing the tension. "I can come back later for the flower delivery." "No, Dylan, it's fine," Mrs. Nancy said quickly, clearly relieved by the interruption. "The arrangements for the winery opening are ready in the back." The young man, Dylan, nodded, his gaze lingering curiously on Hope, before he followed Mrs. Nancy into the back room. Frank took advantage of their momentary privacy. "Hope," he said, lowering his voice. "Julia was pregnant when she died. We were told the baby didn't survive, but there was never a body, never a proper explanation. And you think I'm that baby," Hope whispered, her voice catching. "But that would make you my grandfather," Frank finished, his eyes filling with tears. "Look at your eyes. Your birthmark, and the song. How else could you know it?" Before Hope could respond, Dylan returned, carrying a large arrangement of lilies and roses. He paused, glancing between them with undisguised curiosity. "The delivery's all set, Mrs. Bennet," he said. "Do you need me to come back for the second batch later?" Mrs. Nancy emerged from the back, tension radiating from her rigid posture. "That would be fine, Dylan. Thank you." As Dylan moved toward the door, Frank addressed him. "You work at my vineyard, don't you, young man?" Dylan turned, surprise evident in his expression. "Yes, sir. I'm the assistant enologist at the New South Property Facility." Dylan Mitchell. Frank's eyes narrowed slightly at the surname. "Mitchell. Any relation to—" "My father was Dr. Jason Mitchell," Dylan supplied, a subtle edge entering his voice. "He worked for your family years ago." An unreadable expression crossed Frank's face. "I see. Well, I hope to see you at the opening tonight." After Dylan left, the tension in the small shop returned tenfold. Frank turned back to Hope. "Come to the vineyard today," he urged. "Let me show you your heritage, who you really are." "She knows who she is," Mrs. Nancy interjected sharply. "She's Hope Bennet, and she has been for 23 years. Hope found her voice at last, stronger than she expected. "Why didn't you ever tell me I was adopted?" she asked Mrs. Nancy, years of unspoken questions bubbling to the surface. Mrs. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. "Because it was complicated, sweetheart. I was protecting you." "From what?" Hope pressed. "From whom?" Frank corrected grimly. "My wife, Dorothy. She never wanted Julia's child to exist." An uncomfortable silence settled over the room, broken only by the distant sounds of morning traffic and the soft ticking of the shop's antique clock. "I deserve to know the truth," Hope finally said, looking between them. "Both of you seem to know more about me than I do." Frank held out a business card. "Come to the vineyard today. We'll talk privately." Hope took the card, ignoring Mrs. Nancy's sharp intake of breath. "I'll think about it," she said. After Frank left, Hope rounded on Mrs. Nancy, whose weathered face seemed to have aged years in minutes. "Gloria Mitchell," Hope demanded. "Is that your real name? Were you their housekeeper? Is any part of my life actually real?" Mrs. Nancy, or Gloria, sank into a chair, looking defeated. "Hope, everything I've done has been to protect you. There are things you don't understand, dangers you can't imagine. Then help me understand," Hope pleaded. "Not now," Gloria replied, suddenly looking exhausted. "Please, give me time." Later that afternoon, Hope stood outside the imposing wrought iron gates of Whitman Estate, her heart pounding. The vineyard stretched out before her, endless rows of vines climbing the gentle slopes that overlooked the Pacific. She'd passed these gates countless times, but never imagined she might belong inside them. As if sensing her presence, the gate slowly opened, revealing a long, tree-lined driveway leading to a mansion that seemed to belong to another era. And standing halfway up the drive, waiting for her, was Frank Whitman, his expression a mixture of hope and trepidation that mirrored her own conflicted heart. Taking a deep breath, Hope stepped forward across the threshold, feeling as though she was walking not just onto a property, but into her past, and perhaps, finally, toward answers. The Whitman estate was like stepping into another world. As Hope followed Frank up the winding driveway, the grand mansion came into full view, a sprawling Mediterranean-style villa with terracotta roof tiles and ivy climbing the stone walls. Vineyards stretched in every direction, the perfectly aligned rows of vines creating a hypnotic pattern against the hillsides. "It's beautiful," Hope breathed, unable to hide her awe. "It was your mother's favorite place," Frank said softly. "She'd spend hours sitting on the veranda, watching the sunset over the vines." The words sent a shiver through Hope. Your mother, not an abstract concept anymore, but a real woman who had sat in this very place, who had sung the melody that haunted Hope's dreams. A middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform greeted them at the massive front door. "Welcome home, Mr. Whitman. I've prepared tea in the solarium as requested." "Thank you." "Maria," Frank replied. Then, turning to Hope, "Maria has been with us for 15 years, after Gloria, after Mrs. Nancy left." Maria's eyes widened as she looked at Hope more carefully. "My goodness," she whispered, making the sign of the cross. "Those eyes." Frank placed a gentle hand on Hope's shoulder. "This is Hope Bennett. She'll be visiting us regularly from now on." The solarium was a light-filled space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. As they settled into comfortable chairs, Hope couldn't shake the strange feeling of familiarity that washed over her. "I've been here before," she said suddenly. Surprised by her own certainty, Frank's eyes brightened. "In your dreams?" "No, it's different, more like..." Hope struggled to find the words. "Like remembering something I never knew I forgot. Genetic memory, perhaps," Frank mused. "Or maybe you really were here, as an infant." A silence settled between them as Frank poured tea into delicate porcelain cups. Hope noticed his hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Whitman, please call me Frank, or..." He hesitated. "If it's not too presumptuous, grandfather would be an honor." Hope wasn't ready for that. "Frank," she said gently, "I need to understand what happened to my mother, to me." Frank's expression darkened. He set down his teacup and rose, crossing to a mahogany sideboard. From a drawer, he withdrew a leather-bound album. "Your mother was my only child from my first marriage," he began, returning to sit beside Hope. "Her mother died when she was just 12. Years later, I married Dorothy, who had a son from her previous marriage, Caleb." He opened the album, revealing photographs of a beautiful young woman with Hope's same emerald eyes, always smiling, always full of life. Julia was spirited, headstrong, and compassionate to a fault. Frank continued, his voice thick with emotion. "When she was 18, she fell in love with someone Dorothy deemed unsuitable. When Julia became pregnant, Dorothy was furious." Hope gently touched a photograph of her mother standing among the vineyards, her hand resting on a slightly rounded stomach. "That's me," she whispered. Frank nodded. 7 months along in that picture, you were due in February, but in December, there was..." His voice faltered. "They told me there was an accident. Julia went into premature labor. By the time I returned from a business trip in France, I was told both of you were gone. But I wasn't gone," Hope said quietly. "No," Frank agreed, his eyes hardening. "You weren't. And now I intend to find out exactly what happened that night." As they continued through the album, a shadow passed across the solarium windows. Hope looked up to see a car coming up the driveway. A sleek, black Mercedes with tinted windows. Frank tensed visibly. "Dorothy," he said, his voice suddenly cold. "She wasn't supposed to return until next week." Before Hope could respond, the front door opened, and heels clicked sharply across the marble foyer. A moment later, an elegant woman in her 60s appeared in the doorway. Her steel-gray hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her eyes, cold and calculating, immediately fixed on Hope. "Frank, darling," she said, her voice honey-sweet. but her gaze remained icy. "What a surprise to find you entertaining." "Dorothy," Frank replied, standing. "You're back early." "Clearly just in time," Dorothy replied, her gaze never leaving Hope. "Won't you introduce me to your young friend?" Hope felt a chill run through her as Dorothy's eyes lingered on her birthmark. There was something predatory in the older woman's assessment, like a hawk spotting a field mouse. "This is Hope Bennett," Frank said with deliberate casualness. "She's a talented singer from town. Hope, my wife, Dorothy Whitman." Hope stood, extending her hand. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Whitman." Dorothy's hand was cold and her grip brief. "Likewise, though I'm curious why my husband is showing family albums to a local singer." The emphasis she placed on local made it sound like a slur. "Hope has an interest in the history of Clearwater," Frank improvised smoothly, "including the vineyard's development." "How charming," Dorothy said, clearly not believing a word. Her eyes narrowed as she looked more closely at Hope. "Those eyes of yours are quite striking, rather unusual in these parts." "Thank you," Hope replied, fighting the urge to look away from Dorothy's penetrating stare. "Well," Dorothy said, turning to Frank, "I need to speak with you about Caleb's upcoming visit. Perhaps your guest would like to explore the grounds while we talk business." Frank hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Hope alone, but nodded. "Maria can show you the gardens," he told Hope. "I won't be long." As Hope left the solarium, she could feel Dorothy's eyes boring into her back. Outside, the sun had disappeared behind gathering clouds, casting the once vibrant gardens in gloomy shadow. Maria led her through a maze of hedges and flower beds. "The rose garden was Miss Julia's favorite," she said softly, glancing around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. "You knew my—" Hope caught herself. "You knew Julia?" Maria's eyes widened in alarm. "Please, miss, I didn't say anything. I can't." She looked genuinely frightened. "It's okay," Hope assured her, confused by the woman's fear. "I just—" "There you are," came a male voice. Hope turned to see Dylan Mitchell approaching down the garden path, carrying a folder of papers. "Dylan, what are you doing here?" "I work here, remember?" he said with a half-smile. "I was bringing some test results to Mr. Whitman's office when I saw you through the window." He turned to Maria. "I can take it from here, Maria. Thanks." The housekeeper hurried away, visibly relieved. "What was that about?" Hope asked. Dylan's expression grew serious. "Everyone's on edge whenever Mrs. Whitman returns. She has a reputation for firing people without warning." They walked together toward a gazebo overlooking the vineyards. Once they were seated, Dylan leaned closer. "Look, I don't mean to pry, but it's not every day Frank Whitman personally escorts someone through the estate. Is everything okay?" Hope hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. "It's complicated. I'm trying to learn about my past, and Mr. Whitman is helping." Dylan studied her for a long moment. "Your eyes," he said finally. "They're just like Julia Whitman's." Hope's heart skipped. "You knew her?" "No, but my father did. He was the family doctor before." Dylan trailed off, his expression darkening. "Before he died." A charged silence fell between them. "Dylan, do you know what happened the night Julia died?" Hope asked quietly. His jaw tightened. "My father never talked about it. All I know is that the night she died, he came home distraught. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Suicide, they said." Hope felt a cold dread washing over her. "I'm sorry." Dylan shook his head. "I never believed it was suicide. My father wasn't that kind of man. That's partly why I took this job, to find answers." Before Hope could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from Mrs. "Nancy, come home now. Emergency." Hope showed Dylan the message, her worry evident. "I'll drive you," he offered immediately, as they hurried toward the employee parking lot. Hope glanced back at the mansion. In an upstairs window, she caught a glimpse of Dorothy Whitman watching them, her expression unreadable but somehow menacing. The peaceful day had taken a sinister turn, and as rain began to fall, Hope couldn't shake the feeling that the darkening sky was an omen of things to come. Dylan's truck sped through Clearwater's rain-slicked streets, windshield wipers fighting against the sudden downpour. Hope clutched her phone, trying Mrs. Nancy's number again with no success. "Turn here," she directed, pointing to the narrow street leading to the flower shop. As they rounded the corner, Hope's heart dropped. A police car was parked outside the shop, its lights flashing against the darkened storefront. "Oh God," she whispered. They pulled up behind the police car. Hope was out before Dylan could fully stop, rushing toward the entrance where Officer Jenkins, Clearwater's veteran policeman, stood talking to Mrs. Nancy. The older woman's face was ashen, her hands trembling as she gestured toward the shop's interior. "Mrs. Nancy," Hope called out. "What happened? Are you okay?" Mrs. Nancy turned, relief flooding her features. "Hope, thank God you're safe." Officer Jenkins nodded at Hope. "Someone broke in while Mrs. Bennett was making a delivery, ransacked the place pretty good." Hope pushed past them into the shop and stopped short. The once tidy interior was destroyed. Flowers were strewn across the floor, vases shattered, and the antique cash register lay smashed. But what made her blood run cold was the message spray-painted across the back wall in angry red letters. "Secrets don't stay buried." "Was anything stolen?" Dylan asked, coming up behind them. "That's the strange part," Officer Jenkins replied. "Cash box was untouched. Seems like they were looking for something specific." Mrs. Nancy avoided Hope's questioning gaze. "Probably just vandals," she muttered unconvincingly. After giving their statements, Officer Jenkins left with a promise to increase patrols in the area. The moment he was gone, Hope confronted Mrs. Nancy. "This wasn't random," she said firmly. "This happened the same day I went to the Whitman estate. That's not a coincidence." Mrs. Nancy sank into the one chair that hadn't been overturned. "I told you there were dangers." "Then stop hiding things from me," Hope exclaimed, frustration boiling over. "You're not Gloria Mitchell, are you? The Whitman's former housekeeper." The color drained from Mrs. Nancy's face. Dylan, who had been quietly picking up shattered glass, paused to listen. "Yes," she finally admitted. "I was Gloria Mitchell. I changed my name to Nancy Bennett when we left. When you took me," Hope completed. Gloria looked up sharply. "When I saved you," she corrected. "I didn't steal you, Hope. I protected you." "From what?" Hope demanded. "From whom?" "Dorothy Whitman." Gloria glanced nervously at Dylan, who had moved closer. "It's okay," Hope assured her. "Dylan's father was the Whitman's doctor. He was there the night my mother died." Gloria's eyes widened. "Dr. Mitchell's boy," she whispered, studying Dylan with new intensity. "You look like him." "My father never talked about what happened that night," Dylan said quietly. 2 weeks later, he killed himself, at least. That's what everyone was told. Gloria shook her head. "Jason Mitchell was a good man. He wouldn't have taken his own life." "That's what I've always believed," Dylan agreed. "But I could never prove it." Hope knelt before Gloria, taking the older woman's weathered hands in hers. "Please, tell me what happened the night my mother died. I deserve to know." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. It was a terrible night. There was a storm, much worse than this one. Julia had been feeling unwell all day. Dorothy had brought her tea, claiming it would help with the discomfort. "She poisoned her," Hope whispered, horror dawning. "I can't prove it," Gloria replied carefully. But within an hour, Julia was in agony. Dr. Mitchell was called. He realized the baby, you, had to be delivered immediately. "But I was only 7 months along," Hope said. Gloria nodded. "It was dangerous, but there was no choice. Julia was..." Her voice broke. "She was dying. Dr. Mitchell delivered you. This tiny, perfect baby girl. Julia held you just long enough to sing that lullaby once and whisper, 'Protect our Hope.' Then she was gone." Tears streamed down Hope's face. "And then what happened?" "Dorothy demanded the child be taken away immediately. Claimed the baby had died as well. Dr. Mitchell knew better. But before he could intervene, Frank received word and was rushing home from France. Dorothy was frantic. I overheard her on the phone with someone saying, 'Both problems must be eliminated tonight.'" "Both problems," Dylan repeated grimly. "Julia and her baby," Gloria nodded. "I couldn't let that happen while Dorothy was occupied. I took you and ran. Dr. Mitchell helped create a false death certificate for the infant. He must have known Dorothy would come after him once she discovered the truth." Hope struggled to absorb these revelations. "So Frank never knew I survived?" "No," Gloria confirmed. By the time he returned, Dorothy had crafted the story. Tragic accident, mother and child both lost. Dr. Mitchell likely couldn't bear the deception. Or perhaps Dorothy ensured his silence permanently, Dylan finished, his expression hardening. Hope stood, pacing the wrecked shop. Who could have done this? She asked, gesturing to the destroyed interior. Dorothy just returned today. She couldn't have arranged this so quickly. Caleb, Gloria said, her voice tightening. Dorothy's son. He has people in town. Eyes and ears everywhere. But how would they know I went to the estate today? Clearwater is small, Dylan pointed out. Word travels fast if someone saw you with Frank. Gloria suddenly clutched Hope's arm. You can't go back there, it's too dangerous. I need answers, Hope insisted. Dorothy may be my only link to understanding exactly what happened that night. Dorothy would sooner see you dead than acknowledge your existence, Gloria warned. You threaten everything she's built. What do you mean? Dylan asked. When Julia died, Frank changed his will, Gloria explained. Everything goes to Caleb now. The vineyards, the properties, the business. If Hope is proven to be Julia's daughter, I'd be entitled to my mother's share, Hope realized. I'd threaten Caleb's inheritance. An uneasy silence settled over the ruined shop. Outside, the rain had intensified, pounding against the windows like angry fists. We should report this to Frank, Dylan finally suggested. He needs to know Dorothy might be involved. No, Gloria said sharply. Frank can't protect her. He couldn't even protect Julia. Hope moved to the window, watching raindrops trace jagged paths down the glass. I need to think, she said quietly. This is all too much. Dylan touched her shoulder gently. You shouldn't stay here tonight, not after this. She can come home with me, Gloria offered. I have a small apartment above the shop. The apartment that was just broken into, Dylan countered. No offense, Mrs. Bennett, but that doesn't seem safe. He's right, Hope agreed. But I don't know where else to go. You can stay at my place, Dylan suggested. It's just a small cabin on the edge of the vineyard. But it's secure and off the beaten path. No one would think to look for you there. Hope hesitated, glancing at Gloria. It's a good idea, the older woman reluctantly admitted. Just for tonight, until we figure things out. As they gathered what few belongings remained intact, Hope picked up a framed photograph that had somehow survived the destruction. A picture of her as a child with Gloria, both smiling at a beach picnic. Was any of it real? She asked softly. Any of our life together? Gloria's eyes filled with tears. Every moment, she whispered fiercely. Every laugh, every tear, every birthday candle you blew out. It was all real, Hope. I may have lied about your origins, but never about my love for you. Hope nodded, carefully wrapping the photograph in a scarf before placing it in her bag. Part of her wanted to be angry, to rage against the decades of deception, but looking at Gloria's lined face, at the woman who had raised her with such devotion, she could only feel a complicated gratitude as they left the wrecked shop. Hope didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street, or the driver who watched them intently before making a phone call. They're on the move, he said quietly. The girl and the Mitchell boy want me to follow. On the other end of the line, Dorothy Whitman's cold voice gave a single command. Don't lose them. Dylan's cabin sat nestled among towering redwoods at the eastern edge of the Whitman property, far enough from the main estate to feel separate, yet still technically on vineyard land. It was a small, rustic structure with a wide porch and wood smoke curling from the chimney. It's not much, Dylan said as he led Hope inside. But it's home. The interior was surprisingly cozy. A single open space with a small kitchen area, a worn leather sofa facing a stone fireplace, and a loft bedroom accessed by a wooden ladder. Bookshelves packed with viticulture texts and old vinyl records lined the walls. It's perfect, Hope said genuinely. The cabin felt safe, hidden away from the chaos her life had become. Gloria had decided to stay with her sister in town, promising to meet them in the morning. Now, as rain pattered against the cabin's roof, Hope sat wrapped in a borrowed flannel blanket while Dylan made tea. So, he said, placing a steaming mug before her. You're Julia Whitman's daughter. It wasn't a question, but Hope nodded anyway. Apparently, it still doesn't feel real. And my father delivered you, Dylan added softly. The night he supposedly falsified your death certificate. Why would he do that? Hope wondered. Help deceive Frank Whitman about his own grandchild. Dylan's expression darkened. My father was a good man. But he was afraid of Dorothy. Everyone was. Still is. Hope sipped her tea, letting its warmth spread through her chilled body. Gloria said your father came home distraught that night. I remember, Dylan said quietly. I was only 10, but I'll never forget the look on his face. He locked himself in his study for hours. 2 weeks later, they found him. He trailed off, unable to finish. You don't believe it was suicide? Never have, Dylan confirmed, but I could never prove otherwise. That's partly why I took the job at the vineyard. I thought if I could get close enough to the Whitmans, especially Dorothy, I might find answers. And have you? Hope asked. Dylan hesitated. Nothing concrete, but I've heard things, whispers among the staff. Dorothy has this way of making problems disappear. A shiver ran through Hope that had nothing to do with the rain outside. We need proof, she said firmly, of what happened to my mother, to your father. Proof that I'm really Julia's daughter. I might know where to start, Dylan replied. He crossed to a trunk in the corner and pulled out a dusty cardboard box. After my father died, most of his personal effects disappeared, supposedly taken by the police as evidence, but my mother managed to hide a few things. He removed a worn leather journal and a small envelope. This was his personal journal. I've read it dozens of times, but the entries stop about a month before Julia's death, and this, he held up the envelope, was hidden inside the journal's cover. I've never opened it. Hope stared at the envelope. Why not? Fear, maybe, Dylan admitted, or not being ready for the truth. But now, with everything that's happening, together, they carefully opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a single photograph, yellowed with age. Hope gasped. It showed her mother, very pregnant, standing in the gardens of the Whitman estate. Beside her stood a young man with Dylan's same sandy hair and earnest eyes. Wearing a doctor's white coat, they were smiling at each other with unmistakable affection. Your father, Hope whispered. And your mother, Dylan replied, his voice tight. They knew each other well. Hope studied the photograph more closely. They look close. Dylan nodded slowly. Maybe that's why he helped you escape. Maybe it was more than just fear of Dorothy. A knock at the door made them both jump. Dylan moved cautiously to the window, then relaxed. It's Maria, the Whitman housekeeper. He opened the door to reveal the nervous woman, rain-soaked and clutching a large manila envelope. I'm sorry to come so late, she said breathlessly, but after what happened at the flower shop, Mr. Whitman asked me to bring this to you. He said it's important you see it right away. Hope took the envelope. How did you know where to find us? Mr. Whitman suspected you might be here, Maria replied, glancing at Dylan. Miss Hope, be careful. Mrs. Whitman is making phone calls. She's furious about your visit today. After Maria left, Hope opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of old staff photographs from the Whitman estate, dated 25 years ago. There, standing among the household staff, was a younger Gloria Mitchell, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. Her hair still dark, but her eyes unmistakable. It's true, Hope murmured. Gloria really was their housekeeper. But what caught her attention was a handwritten note from Frank. Look at the third photo, December 1999. Hope flipped to the image. It showed the estate decorated for Christmas. In the background, barely noticeable, was Gloria speaking with Dr. Mitchell. Between them was what appeared to be a medical bag being passed from the doctor to Gloria. December 1999, Dylan mused. Just days before Julia died. My father thinks this proves something, Hope said. But what? Dylan studied the photo more closely. They were planning, he realized. Your escape. My father gave Gloria medical supplies for a newborn. They knew, Hope whispered. They knew what Dorothy was planning. A sudden crack of thunder made them both jump. Outside, the storm had intensified, wind howling through the trees. Hope moved to the window, pushing aside the curtain to peer into the darkness. For a brief moment, she thought she saw headlights in the distance, but a flash of lightning revealed only the empty forest path. We should get some sleep, Dylan suggested. Tomorrow we can talk to Gloria, see if she recognizes these photos. Hope nodded, suddenly exhausted by the day's revelations. I'll take the couch. No, please, take the loft, Dylan insisted. I sleep down here half the time anyway. Later, lying in Dylan's bed, Hope stared at the cabin's wooden beams above her. Rain drummed against the roof, and occasional lightning illuminated the small space. Her mind raced with questions. If Dr. Mitchell and Gloria had helped her escape Dorothy's plans, what exactly had those plans been? And why had the doctor died so soon afterward? She pulled out her phone, noticing a missed call from Frank. A text message followed. "Hope, call me immediately. Dorothy knows everything." A chill ran through her. Before she could respond, headlights swept across the cabin walls. Hope bolted upright, peering through the small loft window just in time to see a black SUV pulling up outside. "Dylan!" she hissed, scrambling down the ladder. "Someone's here!" Dylan was already on his feet, peering through the front curtains. His face went pale. "It's Caleb Whitman," he whispered. "Dorothy's son." Outside, car doors slammed. A man's voice called out, "I know you're in there, Mitchell. Open up. We need to talk about Hope Bennett." Hope's blood turned to ice. She'd never met Caleb Whitman, but his arrival in the middle of a storm, hours after the break-in at Gloria's shop, couldn't be coincidence. Dylan motioned for her to stay back as he moved toward the door, which suddenly reverberated with heavy pounding. "Open up, Mitchell. Don't make this difficult." Dylan grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "There's a back way out," he whispered to Hope. "Through the utility room. My truck keys are in your hand. Get to the truck and don't wait for me." "I'm not leaving you," Hope insisted. "You have to," Dylan urged. "If Caleb's here, it means Dorothy knows who you are. You're not safe." The pounding continued, more insistent now. "Go to Frank," Dylan instructed. "He's the only one who can protect you now." Hope hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty to her new ally. Then the sound of breaking glass from the kitchen window made the decision for her. She squeezed Dylan's hand once, then slipped toward the back of the cabin just as the front door burst open, revealing a tall man with cold eyes and Dorothy Whitman's cruel smile. "Where is she, Mitchell?" demanded Caleb Whitman. "Where's the girl who claims to be my sister's daughter?" Hope slipped through the utility room, her heart hammering against her ribs as she heard Caleb's angry voice echoing through the cabin. Dylan's truck was parked behind the cabin, partially hidden by towering pines. The rain had intensified, drenching her instantly as she sprinted across the clearing. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the keys, finally managing to unlock the door and climb inside. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness as she backed onto the narrow dirt road. Through the side mirror, she caught a glimpse of movement. Caleb emerging from the cabin, spotting the truck, shouting something she couldn't hear over the storm. Hope pressed the accelerator, tires spinning in mud before finding traction. The truck lurched forward just as Caleb reached for the tailgate, his fingers grazing the metal before slipping away. In the rearview mirror, she saw him scrambling toward his SUV, and guilt washed over her for leaving Dylan behind. But there was no turning back now. The dirt road connecting Dylan's cabin to the main highway was treacherous in the storm, winding through dense forest with hairpin turns. Hope gripped the steering wheel, straining to see through the rain-lashed windshield. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, Frank calling again, but she didn't dare take her eyes off the road. After what felt like an eternity, the truck emerged onto the paved highway. Hope glanced in the rearview mirror, relieved to see no headlights following. She needed to find Frank, but going directly to the estate seemed too dangerous with Dorothy there. Instead, she headed toward town, planning to call Frank from somewhere safe. The Vineyard's welcome center on the edge of Clearwater was dark and empty this late at night, but its covered parking area offered temporary shelter. Hope pulled in, killed the engine, and finally answered Frank's call. "Hope, thank God!" Frank's voice was frantic. "Where are you?" "The Vineyard Welcome Center," she replied, her voice shaking. "Caleb showed up at Dylan's cabin. He was looking for me." "Stay there," Frank ordered. "I'm coming to get you. Dorothy and I had a confrontation after you left. She knows who you are." "What about Dylan, Caleb?" "I'll handle it," Frank assured her. "Just stay hidden until I arrive." After disconnecting, Hope sank back against the seat, exhaustion washing over her. The events of the past 2 days felt like some surreal nightmare. Learning her entire life had been built on lies, discovering her true heritage, and now running for her life from a family she'd never known existed. A sharp tap on the window made her jump. Relief flooded through her when she saw it was Dylan, soaking wet but apparently unharmed. She quickly unlocked the door, and he slid into the passenger seat. "How did you get away?" she asked. Dylan's lip was split, and a bruise was forming along his jawline. "Caleb's not as tough as he thinks," he said with a wry smile that quickly turned into a grimace. "I managed to slip out the back while he was checking the other rooms, ran through the woods to the main road and caught a ride with a delivery truck heading to town." "I'm so sorry," Hope said, reaching out to touch his injured face. "This is all my fault." "None of this is your fault," Dylan insisted firmly. "This started long before you ever knew the truth, Hope. There's something I need to tell you. When Caleb broke in, before he realized I was alone, he was on the phone with his mother. I heard him say something about taking care of both Mitchell problems once and for all." A chill ran down Hope's spine. "Both Mitchell problems. You and me," Dylan clarified. "Hope, I think Dorothy believes there's a connection between us beyond just my father being the doctor who delivered you." Hope remembered the photograph they'd found. Julia and Dr. Mitchell looking at each other with clear affection. "What kind of connection?" Before Dylan could answer, headlights swept across the parking lot. They both tensed, but it was Frank's Mercedes that pulled up beside the truck. The elderly man hurried toward them, relief evident on his weathered face when he spotted Hope. "Thank God you're safe," he said, embracing her. He then noticed Dylan and his injuries. "Mitchell, what happened?" "Your stepson happened," Dylan replied tersely. He seemed very intent on finding Hope, wanted to have a family discussion. Frank's expression hardened. "Get in my car, both of you. We need to go somewhere safe." "What about Gloria?" Hope asked. "She could be in danger too." "Already taken care of," Frank assured her. "I sent my most trusted security guard to her sister's house. They've been moved to a hotel outside town." As they drove through the stormy night, Frank explained that after Hope had left the estate, he and Dorothy had a heated confrontation. "I've suspected for years that the story of your death was fabricated," he told Hope. "But I never had proof. When I saw you, heard you sing that melody, I knew." Dorothy denied everything, of course. But when Maria reported seeing you with old staff photos, Dorothy became enraged, started making phone calls immediately. "To Caleb," Dylan supplied. Frank nodded grimly. "Dorothy and Caleb have always been unusually close. They share secrets I've never been privy to." They drove to a small guest house on a secluded part of the Whitman property, far from the main estate. Frank explained it had once been the caretaker's cottage, rarely used and unknown to most of the staff. Once inside, with a fire crackling in the stone hearth, Frank retrieved a leather briefcase. "I've been gathering evidence for years," he said, spreading documents across the coffee table. "Bank transfers, medical reports, phone records, anything that might reveal what really happened the night Julia died." Hope and Dylan leaned forward, scanning the papers. "Look at this," Dylan said, pointing to a medical report. "It's a toxicology report on Julia, dated after her supposed autopsy. The official cause of death was complications from premature labor. But this shows elevated levels of a plant-based toxin, taxine." "You," Frank said quietly. "Dorothy's favorite ornamental shrub. She's always been knowledgeable about plants and their properties." Hope felt sick. "She poisoned my mother." "I believe so," Frank confirmed. "But I could never prove it." "The original autopsy report disappeared. This copy came from a nurse who worked with your father," he added, looking at Dylan. "She mailed it to me anonymously years later, too afraid to come forward publicly." "What about my birth certificate?" Hope asked. "There must be records of my existence." "All destroyed or falsified," Frank replied heavily. "According to official records, Julia's baby was stillborn. The birth and death certificates were signed by Dr. Jason Mitchell." Dylan's jaw tightened. "My father wouldn't have willingly participated in this cover-up. Unless he was protecting someone," Hope suggested softly, remembering the photograph of Dr. Mitchell and her mother, Frank, looked between them, his expression troubled. "There's something else you both need to see." He pulled out a yellowed envelope from his inner pocket and carefully extracted a handwritten letter. "This arrived about a month after Julia died," he explained. "It was postmarked from Seattle, with no return address." Hope took the letter with trembling hands and read aloud. "Frank, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. Dorothy has always hated that your first child would inherit what she believes should belong solely to Caleb. The baby Julia carries is in danger. I've made arrangements to protect the child if necessary, even if it means you may never know your grandchild. Forgive me. A friend." The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if written in great distress. "I always suspected it was from Gloria," Frank said quietly. "But by the time I received it, she had disappeared, along with Dr. Mitchell's family." Dylan stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "My mother moved us to Seattle right after my father's death," he said. "We lived there for nearly 10 years before returning to California." Hope and Frank exchanged startled glances. "Seattle," Hope whispered, "where the letter was sent from." Our mothers knew each other, Dylan realized. They were working together, along with my father and Gloria. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the crackling fire and the persistent drumming of rain on the roof. Outside, the storm continued to rage, a fitting backdrop to the tempest of revelations swirling around them. "There's one more thing," Frank said, his voice suddenly weary. "Something I discovered just this evening while searching through Julia's old belongings." He pulled out a small journal with a worn leather cover. This was Julia's diary. Dorothy thought she'd destroyed it years ago, but it was hidden in a compartment in Julia's desk. Hope reached for it hesitantly, as if touching a sacred relic. "Have you read it?" Frank nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "Only the final entries, Hope. Your mother was in love with Jason Mitchell, and I believe he was your real father. Jason Mitchell, my father." Hope's voice was barely a whisper as she struggled to process this revelation. She looked at Dylan, who appeared equally stunned. "That would make us half-siblings," Dylan finished, his voice hollow. Frank nodded solemnly. According to Julia's diary, they had been in love for nearly a year. He was married. She was the daughter of his employer. They kept it secret from everyone. Hope opened the diary with trembling hands, finding the last entry dated December 15, 1999. Just days before her birth, the handwriting was delicate but rushed. "Dr. M says the baby is healthy despite everything. We've decided on the name Hope. It seems appropriate given our circumstances. Dorothy grows more hostile each day. I've overheard her speaking to Caleb about arrangements after the baby comes. I'm frightened, but Jason promises we'll find a way to be together, all three of us, somewhere far from here. I've asked Gloria to help if anything happens to me. I trust her with my life, and with my child's." Tears blurred Hope's vision as she touched the page, a tangible connection to the mother she'd never known. "All these years," Frank said heavily, "I believed Julia had fallen for a local boy, someone Dorothy deemed beneath our family's status. I never suspected Jason. He was our family doctor for years, a respected member of the community. A married man having an affair with his teenage patient," Dylan said bitterly. "No wonder they kept it secret." "Julia was 18, Frank corrected gently. "And from her diary, it's clear their feelings were genuine." Hope closed the diary, her emotions too complex to untangle. "This is why Dorothy hated my mother so much, isn't it? Not just because she was pregnant, but because the baby, me, was Jason Mitchell's child." Frank nodded grimly. "Dorothy has always been obsessed with bloodlines and inheritance. Julia was my biological daughter from my first marriage. Dorothy feared that Julia's child would have a stronger claim to the Whitman legacy than Caleb. Finding out the baby was fathered by the family doctor, a man Dorothy considered an employee, would have been the ultimate insult to her sense of family pride. So she poisoned Julia, hoping to kill both her and the baby," Dylan concluded, anger hardening his features. "And when that failed, when my father managed to deliver Hope safely, Dorothy had to eliminate all loose ends," Frank finished, "including Jason Mitchell." A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the persistent drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional crack of thunder. "We need to confront her," Hope said suddenly, rising to her feet. "With Julia's diary, the toxicology report, we have enough evidence to go to the police." "It's circumstantial at best," Frank cautioned. "The diary proves Julia and Jason were involved, but not that Dorothy committed murder. The toxicology report is an unsigned copy with no chain of custody. No prosecutor would take the case. Then what do we do?" Hope demanded, frustration mounting. "Just let her get away with killing my mother and Dylan's father." Frank's expression hardened with resolve. "We need Gloria's testimony. She was there that night if she can confirm what happened. Dylan's phone buzzed with an incoming text. His face paled as he read it. "It's from an unknown number," he said. "Mitchell, if you want to see the old woman alive, bring Hope Bennett to the chapel at midnight. Come alone or she dies." Hope's blood ran cold. "Gloria, they've got Gloria." "The chapel?" Frank asked sharply. "The old stone chapel on the vineyard property," Dylan explained. "It's rarely used now, just for special occasions. It's where Julia and Jason used to meet in secret," Frank said, glancing at the diary. Dorothy must have a twisted sense of irony. Hope checked her watch. 11:15 p.m. "We need to go now." "It's obviously a trap," Frank warned. "Dorothy and Caleb want both of you there." "I don't care," Hope insisted. "Gloria raised me. She protected me all these years. I won't abandon her now." Dylan nodded in agreement. "We'll be careful, but we have to try." Frank's shoulders sagged with resignation. "Then I'm coming with you." "The text specifically said to come alone," Dylan reminded him. "Then you'll need someone waiting outside," Frank countered. "Someone to call the police if things go wrong." They formulated a hasty plan. Dylan and Hope would enter the chapel together while Frank waited nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Before leaving, Hope tucked Julia's diary inside her jacket, close to her heart. The drive to the chapel was tense and silent. The storm had intensified, lightning occasionally illuminating the rows of grapevines that stretched across the hills like skeletal fingers. The chapel itself stood on a small rise, its stone walls and single bell tower visible against the turbulent sky. A black SUV, Caleb's, was already parked outside. As they approached, Dylan reached for Hope's hand, squeezing it briefly. "No matter what happens," he said quietly, "we're family. We'll get through this together." Hope nodded, drawing strength from this unexpected bond, a brother she never knew she had until today. The chapel's heavy wooden door creaked ominously as they pushed it open. The interior was dimly lit by candles placed along the aisles, creating eerie shadows that danced across the stone walls. At the altar stood Dorothy Whitman, elegant and poised, even at this late hour, her steel gray hair pulled into a perfect chignon, her expression cold as winter frost. Beside her, Caleb loomed menacingly, his hand resting possessively on the shoulder of Gloria, who sat tied to a chair, her face bruised but her eyes defiant. "Hope?" Gloria called out, her voice strained but determined. "You shouldn't have come." "Touching," Dorothy remarked with icy disdain. The devoted mother figure, still trying to protect her stolen child. "Where she stole me from was a grave you dug," Hope replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "We know everything, Dorothy, about how you poisoned my mother, how you covered up my birth, how you had Dr. Mitchell killed when he threatened to expose you." A flicker of surprise crossed Dorothy's perfect features before her composure returned. "What an active imagination you have, just like your mother, always spinning fantasies." "It's over, Dorothy," Dylan said, taking a step forward. "We have proof. Julia's diary, the toxicology report, Gloria's testimony." Caleb laughed, the sound echoing harshly through the sacred space. "Proof. A diary filled with a lovesick teenager's ramblings. An unsigned medical report. The word of a kidnapper." He shook his head in mock disappointment. "You'll need more than that. Perhaps this will suffice," came Frank's voice from the chapel entrance. He stood framed in the doorway, a sheriff's deputy at his side. "I couldn't wait outside after all." Dorothy's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing with calculated precision. "Frank, darling, what a surprise. I was just explaining to these confused young people how—" "Save it, Dorothy," Frank interrupted, his voice cold. "I heard everything. So did the deputy and the body camera he's wearing." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Dorothy's face. "This is absurd. You have no evidence of any wrongdoing. Let me go, and I'll give you all the evidence you need," Gloria said suddenly. She looked directly at Dorothy, years of suppressed anger finally surfacing. "I've kept silent for 23 years, but no more. I was there the night Julia died. I saw you bring her the tea. I heard you tell Dr. Mitchell that if he revealed the baby had survived, his own family would suffer the same fate as Julia. You wouldn't dare," Dorothy hissed. "I've lived in fear for decades," Gloria continued, gaining strength. "Changed my name, my appearance, moved from town to town, all to protect Hope from you. But I'm not afraid anymore." She turned to the deputy. "I'm ready to make a full statement about everything." Caleb moved with unexpected speed, pulling a gun from inside his jacket and pointing it at Gloria. "No one's making any statements." "Caleb," Dorothy's voice cracked for the first time, revealing genuine alarm. "Put that away. This isn't the plan." "Plans change, Mother," Caleb replied coldly. "You taught me that. Sometimes problems require permanent solutions." The tension in the chapel was palpable as Caleb's gaze shifted, the gun now moving to point at Hope. "Starting with our dear half-sister." The living reminder of Julia's betrayal. "Half-sister," Dorothy repeated, genuine confusion crossing her face. "Don't play innocent, Mother," Caleb sneered. "We've all figured it out. Hope is Jason Mitchell's daughter, not some local boy's as you've always claimed." A strange expression crossed Dorothy's face, something almost like relief, followed quickly by calculation. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I've always known." But Hope caught the momentary confusion, the flicker of surprise that betrayed Dorothy's lie. Somehow, Dorothy hadn't known who her father was, which meant there was more to this twisted family story than any of them yet understood. Before anyone could react, a deafening crack of thunder shook the chapel, momentarily plunging the room into darkness as the candles flickered. When light returned a second later, Caleb had moved, now pressing the gun directly against Hope's temple. "Like mother, like daughter," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "Both destined to die in this chapel." Time seemed to stand still as Caleb's gun pressed against Hope's temple. The cold metal against her skin sent ice through her veins, but something deeper burned within her, a fierce determination that had guided her mother 23 years ago. "You won't shoot me," Hope said, her voice remarkably steady. "Not with a deputy as witness." "Caleb," Dorothy hissed, panic finally breaking through her composed exterior. "This isn't what we discussed. Put the gun down." "Too late for that, Mother," Caleb replied, his grip tightening on Hope. "We're far beyond your careful plans now." Dylan took a cautious step forward. "Think about what you're doing, Caleb. If anything happens to Hope, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison." Caleb laughed, a cold, bitter sound that echoed through the chapel. "Better prison than watching this nobody inherit what's rightfully mine." The deputy had drawn his own weapon, but hesitated, unwilling to risk Hope's life with a hasty shot. "Put the gun down, Mr. Whitman." Frank stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Caleb, this isn't who you are. You're not a killer, isn't he?" Gloria challenged from her chair, her eyes burning with long-suppressed fury. "Tell them. Dorothy, tell them about the night Jason Mitchell committed suicide. Tell them who was with you when you visited his house hours before he died." Dorothy's face drained of color. "Gloria, don't—" "I saw them," Gloria continued relentlessly. "Dorothy and Caleb leaving the Mitchell house after midnight. The next morning, Jason was found dead." Dylan's face contorted with rage. "You killed my father. He was going to ruin everything." Caleb snarled, momentarily distracted, going to the authorities, threatening to reveal that Hope was alive. Hope seized the moment of distraction, driving her elbow hard into Caleb's stomach. The unexpected blow made him double over, his grip loosening just enough for Hope to twist away. Dylan lunged forward, grabbing for the gun. The two men grappled violently, their struggle punctuated by the crack of lightning outside. The deputy moved to intervene, but the narrow aisle between the pews restricted his approach. "Stop this!" Frank shouted, moving to separate them. The gun discharged with a deafening report that reverberated through the small chapel. For one horrible moment, everyone froze. Then Caleb staggered backward, a look of surprise crossing his face as a dark stain spread across his expensive shirt. He looked down in disbelief before collapsing onto the stone floor. "Caleb!" Dorothy's anguished cry tore through the chapel as she rushed to her son's side. The deputy hurried forward, kneeling to check Caleb's pulse while keeping his weapon trained on Dorothy. "He's alive. Get an ambulance," as Frank called emergency services. Hope rushed to untie Gloria, whose weathered face was streaked with tears of relief. "I'm so sorry," Hope whispered, embracing the woman who had raised her. "This is all my fault." "None of this is your fault," Gloria replied fiercely. "It began long before you were born." Behind them, Dorothy cradled Caleb's head in her lap, Her perfect composure finally shattered as she pressed her hands against his wound. "Stay with me," she pleaded. "Don't leave me." For the first time, Hope saw Dorothy not as a villain, but as a mother terrified of losing her child. Despite everything, the sight stirred something within her, a complex empathy she couldn't fully understand. The wail of sirens approached in the distance as rain continued to pound against the chapel's stained glass windows. Dylan stood apart from the others, the gun now secured by the deputy, his expression hollow with shock. "I didn't mean to," he began, his voice barely audible. "It was self-defense," the deputy assured him. "We all saw what happened." As paramedics rushed in with stretchers and equipment, Dorothy was pulled away from Caleb, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "This is your fault," she spat at Hope, years of hatred concentrated in her gaze. "You should have died with your mother!" Before anyone could respond, Dorothy suddenly clutched at her chest, her face contorting in pain. She reached out blindly, knocking over a candelabra as she collapsed. The fallen candles ignited the aged wooden altar cloth, flames quickly spreading to the dry timber of the altar itself. "Fire!" Frank shouted, as the paramedics divided their attention between the two injured Whitmans. Smoke began to fill the chapel, as ancient wood, dried by decades of California sun, provided perfect fuel for the rapidly spreading flames. The deputy herded everyone toward the main doors. But as Hope reached the threshold, she realized Gloria wasn't behind her. "Gloria!" she called out, turning back against the flow of evacuees. Through the thickening smoke, she spotted Gloria kneeling beside Dorothy, who lay gasping on the stone floor, as paramedics worked frantically to stabilize her. The fire had cut them off from the main exit. "There's a side door through the vestry," Frank shouted, pointing toward a narrow wooden door near the burning altar. Hope pushed her way back through the smoke, reaching Gloria and the others. "This way," she called, helping the paramedics lift Dorothy onto her stretcher as they navigated the narrow vestry passage. The ancient beams above them groaned ominously. Outside, rain continued to pour, but it did little to slow the fire that now engulfed the main chapel. They emerged into the stormy night, just as part of the roof collapsed with a thunderous crash. From a safe distance, they watched as the old stone chapel, which had stood for over a century, was consumed by flames despite the torrential rain. Dorothy, now sedated on a stretcher, stirred briefly, her eyes finding Hope's through the chaos. "The cellar," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm and sirens. "The old wine cellar beneath the chapel. The truth. All of it." Before Hope could question her, the paramedics loaded Dorothy into an ambulance alongside Caleb. As the doors closed, Hope caught a final glimpse of the woman who had tried to erase her existence, now pale, diminished, and facing her own mortality. "What did she say to you?" Dylan asked, appearing at Hope's side, his face streaked with soot. "Something about the wine cellar under the chapel," Hope replied. "She said the truth is there." Frank overheard, his expression grave. "There is an old storage cellar beneath the chapel. It hasn't been used in decades. We need to see what's down there," Hope insisted. "Before it's all destroyed." Frank shook his head. "It's too dangerous now, the fire." "The cellar entrance isn't inside the chapel," Gloria interrupted, her voice stronger than it had been all night. "It's accessible through the hillside behind the chapel. I used to help store wine there years ago." Hope looked at the burning building, then at Dylan, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded, understanding without words. Together, they slipped away from the emergency vehicles and circled around the chapel to the hillside where Gloria had indicated. There, partially hidden by overgrown vines, was a weathered wooden door set into the hillside. Dylan pulled it open, revealing a set of stone steps descending into darkness. The distant glow of the fire filtered through cracks in the ceiling, providing just enough light to navigate by. "Whatever Dorothy wanted us to find," Hope said, her voice hushed. "It's down there," with Frank and Gloria waiting anxiously above. Hope and Dylan descended into the earth, into the hidden depths where the final pieces of their shared past awaited. The stone steps descended into darkness, the air growing noticeably cooler as Hope and Dylan made their way underground. The ancient wine cellar smelled of damp earth, aged oak, and the faint ghost of fermenting grapes. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of light filtering through cracks in the ceiling where the fire raged above them. "We need light," Dylan muttered, pulling out his phone to activate its flashlight. Hope did the same, the twin beams illuminating rows of weathered wine racks, most empty but some still holding bottles blackened with age. The cellar was larger than she'd expected, stretching beneath the entire footprint of the chapel above. "What exactly are we looking for?" Dylan asked, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "I don't know," Hope admitted. "Dorothy just said the truth was down here." They moved deeper into the cellar, past forgotten winemaking equipment and stacks of moldering wooden crates. At the far end stood a heavy wooden door, its iron hinges rusted with age and disuse. "There's another room," Hope said, approaching the door. It resisted at first, then gave way with a groan of protest. Beyond lay a smaller chamber that appeared to have once been an office of sorts. A desk sat against one wall, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Shelves lined another wall, holding ledgers and wine catalogs dating back decades. "Look at this," Dylan said, directing his light toward the corner of the room. There, half hidden behind the desk, was an old steamer trunk, its leather straps cracked with age. Together they moved the desk aside and knelt before the trunk. The lock was ancient but sturdy, showing no signs of yielding to their attempts to open it. "We need the key," Hope said, frustration mounting. Dylan examined the lock more closely. "This is older than both of us. Pre-1950s, I'd guess." Hope's gaze fell on a small painting hanging on the wall above the desk, a watercolor of the chapel in its early days, the artist's signature in the corner reading D. Whitman. "Dorothy painted this," she murmured, lifting the frame from the wall. As she did, something small and metallic fell to the floor with a soft clink. A key. With trembling fingers, Hope inserted it into the trunk's lock. It turned with surprising ease, as if recently oiled. The lid creaked open, revealing contents that had remained undisturbed for decades. On top lay a yellowed envelope addressed simply to Frank. Hope handed it to Dylan while she continued to explore the trunk. Beneath were stacks of letters tied with faded ribbon, photographs, and at the bottom, a small wooden box intricately carved with grapevines and musical notes. Hope lifted the box carefully, something inside it shifting with a gentle sound. When she opened it, a haunting melody began to play, the same lullaby that had filled her dreams since childhood. "It's the song," she whispered, tears springing to her eyes. Dylan, who had been reading the letter, looked up sharply. "Hope, you need to see this." The letter was dated December 22nd, 1999, 2 days after Hope's birth and her mother's death. "My dearest Frank, by the time you read this, I will have secured my future and Caleb's. If things have gone according to plan, both Julia and her child are no longer a concern. If you are finding this letter, then something has gone wrong, and the truth threatens to emerge. I must confess something I have kept from you all these years. Caleb is not the son of my first husband, as I've always claimed. Caleb is your son, conceived during our affair while your first wife was still alive? Yes, Frank. The great irony is that while you believed I resented Julia as your child from another marriage, I resented her because she was the legitimate heir, while my son, your son, would always be secondary in inheritance despite sharing your blood. When Julia became pregnant, I could not bear the thought of her child displacing Caleb further. The doctor's involvement complicated matters. Mitchell suspected the tea I gave Julia, though he couldn't prove it. When the child survived, I had to act quickly. I've hidden evidence of Mitchell's relationship with Julia in this trunk. Should I ever need to use it against him? The music box was a gift from him to her, proof of their affair that would destroy his reputation and marriage if revealed. If you're reading this, remember that everything I've done has been to protect what is rightfully ours. And Caleb's. Dorothy Hope stared at the letter in disbelief. Caleb is Frank's biological son, and Dorothy was having an affair with Frank while his first wife was still alive. It gets worse, Dylan said grimly, holding up another document from the trunk. This is a DNA test, dated November 1999. It shows Julia and Caleb were half-siblings, sharing the same father. Frank, Hope whispered. But there's another test here, from the same lab, Dylan continued, his voice tightening. This one compares Julia's baby, you, with Jason Mitchell, and the results are negative. He wasn't your father. Hope felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath her. That's not possible. The diary, the photograph. There's more, Dylan said, pulling out a small leather journal different from Julia's diary. I think this belonged to my father. The journal's entries were clinical, detached, medical notes rather than personal reflections. Dylan flipped to the final pages, dated December 1999. Ethical dilemma beyond resolution. Patient JW. Believes child is mine, but DNA results confirm otherwise. Cannot reveal truth without destroying her already fragile state. DEW knows results using as leverage. Must protect JW and infant at all costs, regardless of paternity. Dylan looked up from the journal, his expression stricken. My father knew he wasn't your biological father, but he let Julia believe he was. Then who is my father? Hope asked, her voice barely audible. The answer came from the cellar entrance, where Frank now stood, Gloria at his side, both illuminated by the flashlight's glow. I am, Frank said quietly. Gloria stepped forward, her eyes reflecting decades of kept secrets. Julia didn't know, she explained softly. None of us did, until the DNA test Dorothy secretly ordered. Julia believed the baby was Jason's. They were in love, planning to run away together, but the DNA test showed I was Frank's child. Hope finished, the horrific truth dawning. My mother was carrying her own father's baby. Frank's face was ashen with shame. I had no idea, he whispered. Julia wasn't my biological daughter. Hope and Dylan stared at him in shock. My first wife, Margaret, had an affair, Frank explained, his voice hollow. She confessed on her deathbed that Julia wasn't mine biologically. I didn't care. I'd raised her, loved her as my own. I never told anyone, not even Julia. So when Julia and I... Hope couldn't finish the sentence. You're not related by blood, Gloria confirmed. But Dorothy discovered this through the DNA test. She realized if the truth came out, that Julia's baby was legitimately Frank's child and not Dr. Mitchell's, then you would have an uncontestable claim to the Whitman inheritance, stronger even than Caleb's, whose birth was shadowed by Frank's first marriage. Dorothy couldn't allow that, Frank said. So she tried to eliminate both Julia and her baby. You, when that failed, when Jason helped deliver you safely, Dorothy had to ensure everyone believed you died alongside Julia. And when my father threatened to reveal the truth, Dylan added, the pieces finally fitting together. Dorothy and Caleb silenced him permanently. Hope clutched the music box, which had fallen silent. When she reopened it, she noticed something tucked beneath the mechanism, a folded note and a small key. The note, in elegant handwriting, read, For my daughter Hope, that she may always carry our song in her heart with eternal love. Julia. The key was attached to a delicate silver chain, a necklace meant for her to wear when she was older. It's a locket key, Gloria explained, tears streaming down her face. Julia had a matching locket. She's buried with it. As Hope absorbed these revelations, a thunderous crash echoed from above as more of the chapel collapsed. Dust and debris rained down through the cracks in the ceiling. We need to leave, Dylan urged, gathering the most important documents and tucking them into his jacket. The whole structure could come down. Hope carefully placed the music box and Julia's note in her pocket, leaving the rest of Dorothy's dark secrets behind as they hurried toward the exit. The past had finally yielded its truths. Complicated, painful, but hers to know at last as they emerged into the rainy night. The chapel's bell tower crumbled with a deafening roar, sending sparks and flames skyward. Hope watched as the past burned away, making space for whatever future might now be possible. 1 year later, Hope stood on the veranda of what had once been the Whitman mansion, watching children file into what was now the Clearwater Music Academy. The sprawling estate that had once symbolized wealth and power had been transformed into a haven for young musicians, its grand rooms filled with the sounds of practice and laughter. The autumn air carried the scent of ripening grapes from the vineyards that still surrounded the property, now managed as a cooperative that supported the school. A familiar melody drifted from an open window, the lullaby that had once haunted Hope's dreams, now being taught to a new generation. Sounds like Madeline's getting better, Dylan remarked, joining Hope on the veranda. 3 weeks ago, she could barely get through the first measure. Hope smiled. She's determined, Reminds me of someone else I know. The past year had been a whirlwind of change. Dorothy had survived her heart attack, but now resided in a secure care facility, her mind clouded by a stroke that had followed her recovery. Caleb had recovered from his gunshot wound only to face charges for his role in Jason Mitchell's death. With evidence from the wine cellar and Gloria's testimony, he'd accepted a plea deal that would keep him imprisoned for many years to come. Frank had made his own form of amends. Upon learning the full truth about Julia and Hope, he had rewritten his will, establishing a trust that divided the Whitman fortune between Hope and various charitable foundations. The estate itself had been donated to create the music school, with Hope and Dylan as its directors. "The new wing is almost finished," Dylan said, gesturing toward the construction at the east end of the property. "We'll be able to accept 20 more students next semester." "Julia would have loved this," Hope replied softly, creating something beautiful out of so much pain. In the months following the chapel fire, Hope had gradually pieced together her mother's story. Julia Whitman had been a talented musician who dreamed of studying at Juilliard before her pregnancy derailed those plans. The music box found in the cellar had been restored and now sat on Hope's piano, a tangible connection to the mother she'd never known. "Gloria's looking for you," Dylan said. "Something about final preparations for tonight's ceremony." Hope nodded. "I'll find her. How's the speech coming?" Dylan grimaced. "Still working on it. Never thought I'd be addressing the governor and half of Clearwater's population." Tonight marked the official dedication of the academy. Coinciding with what would have been Julia's 41st birthday, the event had drawn attention from across the state, with prominent musicians scheduled to perform alongside the academy's first students. Inside the mansion, Gloria, who had finally reclaimed her original name, was directing volunteers in the grand foyer. At 70, she remained formidable, though the weight of kept secrets no longer burdened her shoulders. "There you are," she said, spotting Hope. "The flowers just arrived. I thought you might want to check the arrangements before they're placed." Hope hugged her tightly. "I trust your judgment completely." Gloria's eyes misted slightly. "I still can't believe we're here. After all those years of hiding, of looking over our shoulders. We're safe now," Hope assured her. "And we're home." Later that afternoon, Hope slipped away to the small memorial garden they'd created where the chapel once stood. A simple granite bench faced a bronze plaque engraved with Julia's name and the first bars of the lullaby. Hope often came here to think, to feel connected to the mother who'd loved her enough to ensure her safety, even in death. As she sat quietly, Frank approached, his steps slower than they had been a year ago, his hair whiter, but his eyes clearer than Hope had ever seen them. "Thought I might find you here," he said, lowering himself beside her. "Pre-ceremony jitters," Hope smiled. "Just having a moment with her." Frank nodded, understanding perfectly. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could have predicted. Not quite grandfather and granddaughter, but bonded by shared loss and the complicated legacy they now navigated together. "I brought something for you," he said, withdrawing a small velvet box from his pocket. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Inside lay a delicate silver locket, tarnished with age. Hope recognized it immediately from photographs. "Julia's locket," she whispered. "How did you—" "I had it recovered," Frank explained. "After the ceremony at the cemetery last month, I wanted you to have it." With trembling fingers, Hope removed the small key from around her neck, the one found with the music box, and inserted it into the locket. It opened with a soft click, revealing a tiny photograph of Julia holding a newborn baby, her face radiant with love despite what must have been terrible pain. "She loved you," Frank said simply. "Whatever else was true or false in our family's history, that love was real." Tears slipped down Hope's cheeks as she fastened the locket around her neck, feeling as though a circle had finally closed. "Thank you." As evening fell, hundreds of guests gathered on the estate's expansive lawn. Lanterns illuminated paths between rows of chairs facing a stage erected before the mansion's grand facade. Musicians tuned their instruments as excited children in formal attire waited for their moment to perform. Hope stood at the back, watching Dylan welcome the assembled dignitaries. His voice carried across the crowd, speaking of transformation, of turning tragedy into opportunity, of music's power to heal even the deepest wounds. Then it was Hope's turn, as she walked toward the stage. The weight of the locket against her heart gave her strength. She took her place at the piano, fingers hovering briefly over the keys before beginning the lullaby that had guided her home. The melody rose into the night air, no longer a haunting reminder of loss, but a celebration of found family, of truth uncovered, of love that had survived despite everything aligned against it. As the final notes faded, children's voices joined in, adding harmonies Julia had never written but would surely have loved. In that moment, Hope felt her mother's presence more strongly than ever before, not as a ghost or memory, but as a part of herself, alive in the music they now shared with others. After the performance, as guests mingled and congratulated the school's founders, Hope slipped away again to the edge of the vineyard. The full moon illuminated endless rows of vines, their fruit ripening toward harvest. Life continuing, renewing, transforming. Dylan found her there, 2 glasses of Whitman wine in hand. "To new beginnings," he offered. Hope smiled, taking the glass, "and to the melody that brought us here." As their glasses clinked, somewhere in the distance, a new song began.